Good morning, councillors and those online. Welcome to the Planning and Development Committee meeting of Toowoomba Regional Council. This meeting is open to the public and will also be live streamed. So I'd like to thank those of you in the room today and those online. Welcoming our CEO, Colin, Wendy on the keys, and also Neha. Welcome to Neha, who is first time in chamber, I believe. So welcome. Carrie beside me, General Manager. We've got Jason from Media, Matt Tor, Acting GM Water and Waste, and also Stephanie Keys, our Heritage Architect, who will come up here shortly for the Heritage piece. So I would like to acknowledge the Aboriginal parties whose songlines traverse these lands we meet on today, the Western Waka Waka, Jaibil and Jarawar peoples, and pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the knowledge, rich traditions and bold ambitions of Australia's First People. I would also like to note an apology for Councillor Gardner, and we do need a resolution for that. So if someone would move that. Mayor Jeff, seconded by Councillor Rebecca. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. As far as declarations of conflicts of interest, I have a declaration of declarable conflict of interest from Councillor McDonald.
Thanks, Chair. I have a declarable conflict of interest in regard to item number 3, CBD Heritage Incentive Policy, consideration of an application. I request that it be minuted that I declared a declarable conflict of interest in relation to a similar matter at the Planning and Development Committee meeting 7 December 2021. Item number 3, 2.41 CBD Heritage Incentive Policy, consideration of one application and of Council's decision to allow me to participate in a decision about the matter, including by voting on the matter. As the relevant details or circumstances have not changed since that time, I will participate in the decision about the matter, including by voting on the matter.
Thank you, Councillor Jeff. Now we'll move to item number 3, which is the CBD Heritage Incentives Policy, consideration of an application. So Stephanie Keys, our Principal Architect, if you'd like to come up. And I'll just also refer to Councillor McDonald's declaration of conflict of interest in item number 2, and that he is allowed to stay in the meeting. Over to you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take the report as read, but I'm here to present the one application for painting of the Irish Club Hotel, which is on the corner of Russell Street and Station Street in the CBD, as part of the CBD Heritage Incentives Policy. It's an application for $10,000, which is the standard amount that that people are eligible to apply for. And so through the Chair, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you, Stephanie. Councillor Tim and Councillor Carey.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Carey, Stephanie. So my reading of the policy in the footer, it says this was last updated in 2019 and, proposed that the cost of doing business has probably gone up a little bit more since then. I thought we were going to have a renewal on this fairly recently to up the amount from $10,000.
You are correct, and currently the policy, we're actually in the process of working with governance at the moment to have that policy updated. I think with the change in my role, the person in the role, it's been delayed, but it is actually underway at the moment, and that is one of the things that is under consideration, and we of course would be bringing that policy back.
Yeah, thanks. I don't want to. Well, I have deviated from policies a fair bit in the last few months, to be honest, but $10,000 being less than 1/10 of the total project cost, and this is our policy to incentivise business in the CBD. And I know every dollar helps, but I propose that it's probably not achieving what it's supposed to achieve at this point in time, and the timelines for that coming back to us, increasing the total amount, if the applicant were to wait 3 months, would it be changed? Like, how does that work?
That is a good question.
Sure.
And Kerry might, yeah, Kerry.
To you, Carrie?
Thank you, Councillor Tim. I think Council are aware that we are looking at a whole suite of our incentive policies, and with the intention that all of those policies would be in by the 1st of July. So if it was Council's wish and desire, we could certainly change this policy to come into effect within that same sort of timeline, and potentially the applicant might be encouraged to apply then. I guess the only thing to consider is that I'm not sure what the schedule of works is and the time frame, but I'm assuming they're wanting to get started on this, so it might not be convenient to wait for another couple of months or 3 months until it's ready.
Thank you for the answer, Stephanie.
Actually, I also have something to add, is there is a stage 2. So potentially people can apply again within a certain time frame. So they do have potential to come back and apply for this incentive scheme in the future for other work that meets the eligibility criteria. So that's
Sure.
yeah. But I do know, as Carrie said, that they are very keen to proceed because this has been a project for them that they started in 2021 or 2022. So they are very keen to get started, I think.
Yeah, sure. I suppose my only follow-up question is if you could advise me, this is, to my knowledge, we're going to increase the amount to double sometime, hopefully in the next 3 months. Is this policy, often they have a bit about councillor discretion where we're allowed to do that because of a forthcoming policy or changes that have not yet been made? And if I'm within my rights to do that, could I just have some advice on that, should you know the answer?
I think I'll defer that to Carrie as well.
The policy has guidelines about the amount, but as with all of our policies, it's at Council's discretion relating to the amount. There is $60,000 set aside for these projects each financial year, and to date only $10,000 of that has been expended. So if Council were to choose a different amount, there is the money available in that fund to do so.
Answered your questions, Councillor Tim? Yep. Councillor Carey and then Councillor James.
Thanks very much for the report. I note I just trying to find out what the colour scheme was going to be, and whether it's going to be the same with the gold, prominently gold, or was it going to be green, or vice versa? And I don't know if I think the report says that it's facing Russell Street is going to be mainly green, I think. Is that so?
The colour scheme is based on the Dulux traditional colour range. It still needs to be approved. That is one of the conditions of the grant, of the funding. Basically, the walls are an off-white, like a traditional lime white, and then the trims are a deep green. So that's, and then there's a little, I think the surrounds around the windows, the architraves, are like a deep stone colour. So, yeah, so we encourage applicants to use, obviously, traditional paint colours. Yeah. This one, sometimes we look for buildings to be restored to an original colour scheme, but it's likely that this building was originally face brick. So in this case, it wasn't applicable. And the incentive scheme is very much about improving the streetscape view, and those colours seem appropriate for that position.
No, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you.
That's all right.
Councillor James.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Look, my question or comment with this is, look, I'm completely comfortable with the report and the recommendation. Well, I was, as is, but just my concern now is obviously with the points that Councillor McMahon has raised, are we in a position where, as I said, I think we have to, incentives change, prices change, you make a decision when you decide to make an application or purchase something. So there's that side of it. But the fact now that obviously publicly we're sort of talking about the fact that it's going to be reviewed. Publicly, I didn't realise it was going to be doubled. That's sort of been made. That's sort of been said. The concern I have with this is if we because there's obviously a recommendation that goes to ordinary meeting. If we recommend this as is there the possibility that we go back to the applicant and just say, just for your awareness, the policy is going to be reviewed? I mean, reviewed could mean it gets culled, tripled, stays the same. Multiple things could happen with that. You wouldn't want to preempt that it's going to double or half. Or so I wonder if what I'm getting at, I suppose, is there a point where because I think we have to vote either in favour or not in favour of this as it stands now, but because it's a recommendation, the opportunity to go back to the applicant just saying, just to make you aware, there is a review of this policy, which we expect to come back to council in whenever that period is, and then they can make it. They might say, oh, well, we will withdraw and maybe we'll reapply back then. Or as you said, they're setting their program of works and we'll just go ahead. So that's the only little concern I have now, is because we've sort of started talking about this policy and talking about it being reviewed and even talking about potentially it being doubled and things like that. There probably is a position, I think, where at least we just advise the applicant of that there is a review, and then they can make up their own mind. So then if they decide to withdraw their application before next Tuesday, when we ratify all of this, play on.
I'm happy to take that to the applicant. If that's...
Great. Councillor Trevor and then Councillor Bill.
Okay, we've got a motion on the books today, and it's today, and we make the decision of what's in front of us today. What could happen in the future, as Councillor James said, we could triple it, we could double it, we could knock it on the head. So we make the decision of today. If the applicant withdraws their application for a grant, so be it. And then they take the risk of reapplying in a few months' time or half a year's time. But they may have work ready to go, so they may need the 10 grand or whatever it is. So we make the decision as of today, as you would, all of us around the room and those watching, you make a decision of today, and with government, anything can change tomorrow. And you make the decision as you see it today. And that's my opinion on the whole matter.
Thank you, Councillor Trevor, Councillor Bill, and then Mayor.
Wouldn't this policy, when it comes back to council, Carrie, through the chair, it's still at the discretion of council whether we alter it, or whether in fact there's a monetary amount as suggested by some around the room. I would have thought, let's not preempt what the decision may be in the future, and I tend to agree with Councillor Trevor. We've got a decision on the books before us. And I don't know how you would feel about directing an officer to go and say, well, look, there's more money up for grabs.
Was that Colin?
In terms of directing an officer, I note that this is a public meeting and therefore actually you've publicly released that information anyway. I'm happy that an officer actually contacts the applicant to explain in more detail what's just occurred. But as has already been mentioned, this is in the public realm now. It is a future decision of council whether or not you change the policy, and if so, what that amount may be. And that is an unfettered decision, meaning that nothing that's actually discussed here really prejudices that, because you've not yet got the information to make that decision. So
yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks,
Thank
Colin.
you, CEO.
I would concur that the entire amount is discretional, as per each and every application that may come in. So it may be as simple as a separate decision regardless of the policy position in the future of council. So anyway, thank you.
Thanks you, Councillor Bill. And Mayor?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm happy to move the recommendation from officers for the reasons being.
And seconded by Councillor Trevor. Do we need to move into debate? Nope. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Passed. Unanimous. Okay, so now we shall move on to item number 4, Regional Development Statistics Report, February 2025. Our author, General Manager Carrie Musgrove, our Acting General Manager for our Planning and Development Group. Over to you, Carrie.
Thank you. Councillors, before you have the Regional Statistics Report for the month of February. There are a number of summary dot points on page 4, I believe it is, where the arrows are, which is really just comparing the statistics that happened in the month of February against the month of January, noting that January is quite typically a low volume month for development generally. The other matter that I want to bring to your attention is Wendy, if you wouldn't mind going to section 2 on the next page about future housing coming to the market. We've done a little revamp in this section to reflect it better against the targets that Shaping SEQ require for our region. So it's been distilled down to a monthly average of 104 new dwellings per month. And you'll see from table 2.2, that for the month of February there were 99 dwellings approved. So obviously these numbers will fluctuate and go up and down, but from this point forward I intend to be reporting on these targets and how we're performing against it. So as we build up some data, we'll have some good trend lines and some good data, so we'll be able to track how we're progressing against it. So I'm taking the report as read, but I am happy to take any comments or questions that you might have regarding this matter.
Councillors, any questions? Mayor McDonald?
Just a comment. Thank you very much, Carrie, for including that information. I think this we're at a time of significant change in regard to land use, density of housing, utilising capacity in current networks, and to demonstrate that by way of numbers with a graph that shows what the target is to where we're tracking is very useful, I think, from a community perspective. Given that the Residential Activation Fund is now open, and Council made a decision back in December to assist the operational arm to put together a potential suite of let's say, initiatives or areas of capital improvement that can help stimulate that growth and assist with the targets similar to what we're talking about here. Are you confident that the decision of Council back in December gives officers enough information to actively put a submission in, or number of submissions into government in let's say, a short period of time?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, through you, Chair. Yes, we're actually in the process. Sorry, I'll move this. All I could see was a big silver thing. We are in the process. We've developed a working group to really target all of these projects. So in December, as you're well aware, there was a list of a whole heap of infrastructure that could be used to unlock housing, which is the focus of the fund. So we will continue to work through that list, but we also identified the need to come up with some smaller infrastructure charges pieces as well. So, you know, smaller road upgrades and other things that will also unlock. So we don't want to only be available for projects that are in the millions and millions of dollars when we might be able to pick up several smaller ones as well. And don't get me wrong, we're certainly going for the big ones as well, but I think it's important to have a whole suite so that if there might be only a few million left in the fund at any point in time, we've got something that fits that.
Through you, Chair. Thank you very much, Carrie. I do appreciate that. I guess the level of urgency, given that we are up against others in the southeast corner, is something that councils were very mindful of, which is why we put forward that decision in December to assist. So I'm glad to hear that you've got all the information you need and no further decision from council is required, and we can act on that in the next 24, 48, 72 hours.
Mr Mayor, I'll just let you know that we've already got a Smarty Grants portal, that might not be the right word, already targeted for this. We met yesterday with our lead on this project, and yeah, we certainly know how urgent it is.
Thanks very much. No further questions. I'm happy to move the report if there's no others.
A question there, Councillor Carey, or did you?
Yes, I have, if I could. Not on that point, but if I could take you to item number 6, the economic incentive policies, and I apologise for not giving you notice of this query, but the second one there, policy 2.80, temporary economic development incentives for non-residential development. It seems to me to be unusual. What's being requested is a request to change approval, low impact industry, whereas most of the others that I'm familiar with are to reconfigure allotments or for multiple dwellings or whatever, rather than just the change of use there. Do you know anything? You may not know anything about this particular one. If not, I'll take it on notice if that's so. If you would take it on notice for me. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. Sorry, Councillor, I don't know the details of this, but I will take it on notice and I'll provide feedback on that particular item.
Any further questions? No. So we have the item, the motion that the report of the Acting General Manager, Planning and Development Group on the Regional Development Statistics for February 2025 be noted by Council. Had that moved by Mayor McDonald, seconded by Councillor James. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, and I now conclude the meeting. Closed. Councillor Taylor was absent from the room. Do we need to note?
Well, good morning, councillors, CEO Colin, gallery staff, and I acknowledge Matt as acting GM, and Cassie, and Yvonne. Could I start by opening the meeting? As we know, it's live streamed, and please do what I haven't done. Just bear with me. Leave the last meeting and log on to this meeting. We're good. I'd like to acknowledge the custodians on the land in which we meet today, the Jarrawa, Guyval and Biggambull people to the west, and the Western Waka Waka Nation. Just as I always do, I'd like to briefly acknowledge their connection to the land and how important that is, not just to First Nations people, but to everyone, and how we are actually connected, whether we like it or not, as a community, and we achieve things together as a community, as a boardroom, as a council. So it's a principle that has run true and stood the test of time for many, many, many centuries. So I'd just like to acknowledge that fact. If we move on to item 2, attendance, including apologies, leave of absence and declarations, conflict of interest. We do have an apology from Councillor Gardner, so we need to have a motion on that. Councillor James moved, seconded Councillor Edwina, that Councillor Gardner be granted a leave of absence. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. I don't have any declarations of conflicts of interests. If something pops up, let us know on the way through. Yeah? Item 3, Greater Western Toowoomba Sewerage Catchment Study, and the author is Cassie Wright. Hand over to you, Matt or Cassie.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just run through the outcomes of the Greater Western Toowoomba Sewerage Study. So the scope of the study was to prepare a validated hydraulic model to assess the ability of the network to cope with augmentations and growth in the study area that incorporated the LGIP planning horizons, and then to develop strategies to identify what augmentations would be required. So the study area includes Glenvale and Torrington west of Boundary Street, Cotswold Hills, Charlton, Westbrook and Wairima. And all of these areas are serviced by the Waitella Water Reclamation Facility. So the study area was last investigated in 2015, and there's been significant changes to the infrastructure and the growth in the area, which has resulted in the need to review that study area. So the latest growth model dataset has been used for this study, which is the April 2024 dataset. And as such, the sizing, the timing and the cost estimates for the augmentations have been identified as an outcome of this study. So due to the high growth in the area, there are significant augmentations required to get us through to the planning limit of 2061. And this includes major upgrades to Coringa Valley, the Gowrie Junction, and trunk gravity mains at Westbrook. Overall, the total cost estimate for these augmentations is in the order of $50.5 million, with the majority of this trunk infrastructure recommended for inclusion in the LGIP. So the planning report also considered the implications of a couple of alternative options, and these include the infill sewering of Torrington Industrial Area and Wairima, the redirection of catchments such as Drayton to free up capacity through the city trunk area, and also the construction of a new water reclamation facility to the south or west of Toowoomba, which would reduce pumping costs to Waitella, the current facility. As such, the recommendation for this study is to endorse the planning report and the addendum for the Greater Western Toowoomba Sewerage Study to use to inform our capital works program moving forward.
Any questions, councillors? Any need for debate? So I'll read the motion out that Council endorse the Greater Western Toowoomba Sewerage Catchment Study Planning Report December 2023 and addendum to the Greater Western Toowoomba Sewerage Catchment Study January 2025, and the use of the planning report and addendum to inform future capital works programs and the local government infrastructure plan. Do I have a mover? Councillor Trevor, second. Councillor Rebecca. Those in favour? It's carried. Thanks, Cassie. You're the author of the next one too. Item 4, Pittsworth Sewerage Catchment Study 2025.
So similar scope here. This is a Pittsworth Sewerage Catchment Study. So again, the scope was to develop a validated hydraulic model to be able to assess what augmentations would be required to incorporate the growth in these areas consistent with the LGIP. So the study found that generally there is sufficient capacity in the gravity network to cater for growth past the 2051 planning horizon. All of the pump stations have sufficient capacity up to 2041, and at which point the Pittsworth Pump Station 3 at Crinky Street requires augmentation. The capacity of the current Pittsworth Water Reclamation Facility was also assessed, and with the growth rate adopted, that capacity will actually be exceeded by 2031. So the total cost for the augmentations within this study area are $11.3 million, the majority of which is considered trunk infrastructure with the Pittsworth Water Reclamation Facility, and that's recommended for inclusion in the LGIP. There is a net $10.2 million increase in the capital expenditure within the 10-year program, and that's essentially to bring forward that infrastructure required to accommodate the growth.
No questions? Councillor Trevor?
Just in relation to water in Pittsworth, currently it's all boreholes, is that correct? And with future growth out there, which there will be future growth, have we got enough water to supply, or will we have to dig another bore or drill another bore? Or
Through the chair, so the water supply in Pittsworth is provided by 2 bores from Brookstead and a Great Artesian Basin bore that we have at Yarranlee. There are some capacity constraints within the water supply network in Pittsworth, and that's subject to an existing study that we have ongoing to look at what future water sources are needed to ensure that we have water to provide water security to that community.
thank you.
Councillor Jeff?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Through you, Yvonne, thank you very much for the report, or the 3 reports actually, but the reports, and Cassie for your input. Obviously, Pittsworth is one of those areas that's growing at a faster rate than what we had predicted. Given that the Toowoomba to Warwick pipeline, I know it's nothing to do with this particular one, but there is an expectation when infrastructure is built in a place that growth would occur in those areas. So just from a modelling perspective, how regularly do we do the modelling in other townships across the region that may, or is it triggered by growth that's changed our pattern? How regularly do we do these?
Thank you for the question. So the prioritisation model, the team has a network prioritisation model that it kind of sets the order of doing these studies and looks at the different growth in the areas to make sure that we are accounting for those growth areas. So it's a reprioritisation process to assess the new data coming in and then determine which areas need to be looked at in higher frequency.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Obviously, this is one of those ones that triggered that and gave it a bit of a priority. So comfortable, and thank you very much for the report. Happy to move it if there's no more questions.
Sorry. Read the motion that Council endorse the Pittsworth Sewerage Catchment Study Planning Report, January 2025, and that the report be used in the formulation of a future capital works program and informing the local government infrastructure plan. Got a mover in Councillor Jeff, seconder, Councillor Kerry. Those in favour? It's unanimous. You've been busy, Cassie. The Yarraman water supply, item number 5. Straight over to you.
So again, the scope of the Yarraman water supply study was to develop a calibrated water model, again to look at the different growth horizons and assess what augmentation strategies would be required to resolve any of those deficiencies. So the study found that there are existing widespread fire flow issues in this area. So augmentation strategies have been proposed to resolve these deficiencies, and that's at an estimated cost of just under $2.3 million. So that's an increase of $1.35 million in capital expenditure that is currently included in the capital works plan. Construction of a new Yarraman water treatment plant was also investigated based on current challenges with water quality in the existing treatment system. And so based on high-level cost estimates, we're recommending that the current allocation of $7.35 million is retained in the Capital Works program for this upgrade project for the treatment plant. So overall, the growth projections require future augmentations of $1.28 million. However, they are not expected until 2051. Thank you, Chair.
Question, Councillor Tim?
Yeah, thank you too, if I might. Good morning, team. I suppose with the three reports that we've been talking about today, they're all talking about growth in certain areas and how you can work with the trunk infrastructure necessary. And I just wanted to, I suppose, hear from you guys about this work. We are, as you know, working fairly hard on a new planning scheme at the moment with a strategic intent talking about growth predictions in certain townships around Toowoomba region. And if the work that you're doing in these three reports today is influencing future planning scheme matters, and if that conversations and input into the planning scheme is happening because of these reports.
Through the chair, absolutely. That's the purpose of these. That's one of the core purposes of these planning reports. So information from these reports directly feeds into the LGIP and then directly used in the development of the planning scheme and other planning matters. So that is one of the core intents of these in these reports.
Yeah, thank you. Just a follow-up, if I could, Chair, relating to Yarraman. So the two sources of water from Yarraman are the Nuku pipeline. Did I say it right? Nuku, and the reservoir, called the Ted Picalis Weir. And I understand that hasn't been used for quite some time. And so we're using the pipeline to get the water, and it comes from our neighbours in the north, and then we treat it. And you're saying perhaps a 2051 timeline for a new water treatment plant. I suppose my question is, Yarraman to Nanango is not that far, and with the growth that they're experiencing there and will continue to grow by 2051, would a treated water pipeline and then paying a rental fee as such from the north be on the cards?
So, as you've stated, we've got two water sources in Yarraman. We've got the Ted Picalis Weir, which is owned by council, and we have the Nuku pipeline, which comes from Toowoomba Dam, which is owned by Sunwater. We do utilise both sources. So the Ted Picalis Weir, we do utilise it as much as we possibly can. However, we do have issues with that source during dry periods due to the actual capacity of that weir, but also water quality constraints, which require us to blend the water with the Nuku pipeline supply. So both water sources are there and available. The upgrade of the water treatment plant will be required prior to 2051, so it's actually in one of the shorter term horizons, and part of the reason there is land tenure, so we don't actually own the land that the water treatment plant is located on, and there are other constraints with that water treatment plant to do with its age and treatment efficiency. So the treatment plant will need to proceed in the next sort of 5 years. In terms of looking at a pipeline from Nanango or the Kingaroy, sort of that South Burnett area, my initial response to that would be that it's not something that we would look to consider. A treated water pipeline of that length has its own water quality challenges, particularly knowing the raw water supplies in the area do have high levels of some products that cause or some disinfection byproducts. So a long pipeline like that is unlikely to be effective for us. And the existing water sources we have are considered to be suitable going into the future.
Councillor Kerry, you got a question?
Yes, if I could. I'm just curious in relation to what fire flow issues are. And Googling it, I see that it's a tool for calculating water flow for fire suppression, if that's the meaning of it in this context. Is it the case that that there are currently concerns about the ability to fight a house fire if it occurs in Yarraman at the moment at various places?
Through the chair. So fire flow issues are defined by the network not being able to meet our minimum requirements for fire flow, which for residential area is 15 litres a second at 12 metres residual pressure. And for non-residential, it's 30 litres a second. So currently there's widespread failures through Yarraman as the network's not able to provide that flow at certain areas. So that's what the purpose of the augmentations are, to resolve those issues.
So I take that is a concern that's the reason for the report, and no doubt we would prioritise its attention.
Yes.
Yeah, just to further add to that, so yes, it is identified as a risk. I would note, however, that every time we do a planning study, there's obviously changes in the network that occur, and we always identify new fire flow issues. So it's not an unusual thing to see fire flow issues when we do a planning study. It's just an important tool as the modelling is reviewed each time to identify where those issues may be, so that we can prioritise our capital plan and reduce that risk over time.
No further questions? Yeah, Matt, I note a really important point. That's why we need to keep our finger on the pulse when it comes to this sort of planning around critical infrastructure, because every community and communities at different rates will continue to grow. So we need to be able to, as the technical word, augment the, make the pipes bigger, I call it. But anyway. The motion is before Council that Council endorse the Yarraman Water Supply Study Planning Report, January 2025, and the report be used in the formulation of future capital works programs and informing the local government infrastructure plan. And I've got Councillor Tim who's moving that. Do I have a second? Councillor Carroll. Those in favour? That's carried. Thanks, officers. Thanks, councillors. That concludes the meeting. Next up is the Infrastructure Committee meeting. Do you just want a break or just keep going?
We're right, still hasn't gone red. Good morning, councillors, and welcome to the Infrastructure Committee meeting, Toowoomba Regional Council for April. The meeting's open to the public and will be live streamed. I'd like to thank our staff that are in the room with us today and to anyone else that's in the room, and acknowledge everyone watching via council's social media channels. I remind councillors to click Join Meeting in board view. And I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners, the Aboriginal parties whose songlines traverse the lands we meet on today, the Western Waka Waka, the Gabal and the Jadawal, and the Bigamill people who have land rights to our west. And I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the knowledge, the rich traditions and bold ambitions of Australia's First Peoples. Attendance, we have leave of absence and declarations of conflict of interest. I believe Councillor Gardner is joining us online, so
perhaps if we take it as an apology
until he comes on. So we might need a resolution for his absence. Moved the Mayor, seconded Councillor Main-Tyfel, that we accept Councillor Gardner's apology for this meeting. Those in favour? It's carried, thank you. And now we move on to the declarations of prescribed conflict of interest. Councillor Vonhoff, item number 5, Toowoomba Region Aerodrome Advisory Committee, appointment of community members.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's not a prescribed, it's a declarable conflict of interest. I inform this meeting that I have a declarable conflict of interest in this matter as defined in Section 150 EN of the Local Government Act 2009. The nature of my interest is as follows. One of the 6 individuals who registered their interest to be on the Toowoomba Region Aerodrome Advisory Committee is married to a family member. I have previously made this declaration in relation to the Advisory Committee at the ordinary meeting of Council on the 19th of January 2021, item number 16, and at the Infrastructure Committee meeting of the 8th of September 2020, item number 4. Councillors at that time determined that because the individual is married to my relative and the advisory committee does not have decision-making powers into council, I could participate in the matter, including by voting on the matter. My personal circumstances have not changed, but I respectfully bring this again to councillors, given that on matters pertaining to leases, leaseholders and commercial arrangements with council, I have a declarable conflict of interest relevant to item number 7 of the Corporate Services Committee meeting of the 9th of April 2029, tomorrow, and the Toowoomba City Aerodrome Review. I note the terms of reference attached in attachment 3, that again, the advisory committee's decisions are not binding on council, but I also note in that terms of reference that the advisory committee is there to represent the interests of aircraft operators and business to council. Given the change in circumstances relating to the review being undertaken by council, I will leave the meeting, including the area set aside for the public, and stay away from the meeting while the matter is discussed and voted on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vonhoff. Thank you. So we move on to item 3, which is a review of subordinate local law number 1.15, carrying out works on a road or interfering with a road or its operations 2020. And before we move into that, I'd like to ask, we are going to close the meeting just for some clarity on a couple of matters. So Councillor moved the Mayor, seconded that we close the meeting to the public, seconded Councillor James. Those in favour? It's carried, thank you.
legal, confidential
Yes.
legal matter to consider.
Okay, yes. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. We'll resume the meeting. Apologies to the general public that has taken so long. We just had a legal matter that we needed to clarify. Thank you. So we move now to the review of local law number 1.15, carrying out works on a road or interfering with a road or its operation, 2020. And we move to the agenda. I'll ask our General Manager of ISG, Mr Mike Brady, to introduce the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, councillors.
Morning, Mike.
Councillors, we've got a few reports today. The first of all is the review of Subordinate Local Law 115. As the report notes, councillors, we've been on a bit of a journey here over the last, I'd say the last 6 months or so. And as far as where we are with the process of amending a subordinate local law, we've now sort of completed, as per attachment 2, we've completed up to and including step 5. And it's today where council will be looking at that step 5 and whether through step 6, which is the resolution to go forward, and step 7 is as indicated there. So we're nearly there, councillors, which is good to know if council's comfortable to continue going forward in regards to what's been presented today. Noting that, councillors, a lot of time from the team, big effort from the team has gone into assessing the submissions that did come in post the advertising period, which went for nearly, I think, 45 days through into February, then through a couple of information sessions with council in respect to what's in the report here today, councillors. But there was an additional engagement with industry as well. So that additional engagement was to get clarification on some of those submissions and the issues that were raised. And so that happened. And we also took out to industry, invited them to a discussion on what was being proposed. So we've engaged quite closely with the industry in respect to the amendment that's going forward. As council is aware, we are the road infrastructure manager, and when we look at subordinate local law 115, it's in respect to operations within the road reserve that could be undertaken by anybody for that matter. So it's not just the development industry, so it could be mum and dads doing a driveway, it could be anybody needing to do something within the road reserve. And so those elements and of the subordinate local law actually are pretty broad in their both their what they encompass, but what they're applied to. So any application that comes in, and I think that's got to be kept in mind because we're dealing with a big spectrum of peoples or companies or that may wish to undertake works within the road reserve. That said, I might, through your chair, if it's okay, just ask the Acting Manager, Transport and Drainage Planning, Angelo, and Acting Principal come up and just talk to it a little bit more.
Yes, thank you,
okay.
Mr Brady.
And,
my apologies
exactly
in not recognising Angelo and Mr Casagrande and Mr Bannon. Thank you.
Did you want to go, Angelo?
Thank you, Angelo.
Thank you, Chair. As indicated by GM Brady earlier, Council has been on a journey since September, and where it culminates today in the revised subordinate local law, which is before you, which has been discussed with industry and through various forms. And we've certainly taken the advice received through the community consultation phase on board to revise the sport at local law as you've got. So happy to take questions. I've also here today Joe Bannon to assist in answering any questions as well.
Councillor Rebecca, Councillor Von Hoff and Councillor.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair. Thank you very much, Angelo, Joe and GM Mike. Just in regard to attachment number 5, the draft application form, we've received correspondence and it's something that we've talked about with regards to making this an online process so that it's easier for people, and then there's also potentially an ease for council as well, because we often get incomplete forms, and so the idea potentially could be that if it was online, you wouldn't be able to submit it if there was a part of the application form that wasn't complete. So can we just have, through you, Chair, to any one of the gentlemen, can we just have a conversation about the potential of putting the application form online and what that would take, how we can do it, if there is a will to do it? Can we just have a conversation, please, about that? Thank you.
Just pause there for a moment. Thank you, Councillor Von Hoff.
I do have a addition to the motion that's been put up to basically cover what Councillor Rebecca has been talking about. Would that be?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr Manteuffel. Councillor Manteuffel, sorry, would you like to read that out for us?
Okay.
Thanks.
Part 2 of
and then,
that.
of course, Councillor Von Hoff can comment. Thanks.
The addition to the motion that's been put up there. So, yes, that one there, that would be number 1 and number 2, support and fund the transition to enable road operation processes, including, in brackets, application to undertake work within the road reserve to be lodged and paid electronically online. Reasoning behind that is to probably bring us into the 2025s as per other branches of TRC who are already doing electronic payments and all that type of stuff. This is, I believe, going to save time for all the staff within ISG and also just bring us up to date. And I think it'd be beneficial for anybody putting in an application to ISG and make ISG more efficient. They can concentrate on things more wholesome to their workload.
Thank you, Councillor Manteuffel. Councillor Von Hoff, does that tick your box?
Yeah, I'm grateful for that. But it was just, if there is some, I'm sure there's valuable information that the officers could give about, there's putting stuff online and then there's making it useful. So we just, I'd like to understand what we need to do to make sure that it actually, people aren't trying to do something online and it's just more frustrating.
And Mr Brady will comment on that.
Yeah. No. I'm very happy with the suggested motion to be added here, because that does give us support to develop up the application processes to be used, that customer experience, that user friendliness to it, but also then make sure that we can get a proper made application, and that there'd be mandatory boxes in filling in and those sorts of things. So, as indicated by Councillor Manteuffel, that should also reduce time for all parties and help expedite the process going forward. So, if we can move in that direction, I think that would be a very positive outcome, particularly for the customer experience as much as our internal efficiency opportunities.
Thank you, Mr Brady. Any other questions, councillors? I'm sorry, Councillor Melissa Taylor.
That's okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, gentlemen, and also to the teams who have worked really hard on this. And it's been a very long process, and I'm hoping we're nearly there. Hoping. But I truly do appreciate the work that you've put in. So just a couple of questions, if I may, please, Chair. The first is with attachment 6. I'm just curious as to why this was confidential. and this was the community feedback. And I understand that the information or the feedback actually has names and companies, but I feel if that had been redacted, it would have been helpful if that information had been made public. So I'm just wondering why it was confidential to start with. Oh, well, may I start with that question first? Thank you.
In essence, what you said is why it's confidential. We've got names and businesses and those sorts of things there, and commentary in regards to how the process work in people's opinions work today. So from that perspective, that said, it is council's choice ultimately to agree or not agree with something staying in confidential. I suppose we haven't spoken to those individuals, whether they'd like to see their submissions in the public realm. So I'd have to just get some advice on that prior to making that happen. But I might just hand to the
Thank you, Mr.
CEO.
As an observation, I'd say that we're transitioning a little bit from entire attachments being marked confidential, as has been custom and practice, to a process more about, pardon me, at least now less is being put in attachments or attachments are being broken up such that less is confidential. We're transitioning then to, as I think you suggested, about can we redact just personal information within the attachment. So we're in a transition phase. I'll undertake, if it's the council's will, to have a look at that attachment again out of session, and if we can change it for the ordinary meeting going forward with redactions, we'll do so. I just caution that sometimes an attachment which is 90% redaction is actually worse than just calling the document confidential.
Fair enough. Thank you, Interim CEO, and thanks, GM Mike. May I make a suggestion that maybe going forward, if we are asking the community for feedback, maybe it's a question we can ask at the end. With your permission, can we publish? Or I don't know what wording, but maybe that's a question going forward. So then we've got the opportunity, if we feel that is beneficial to the to why we're getting the feedback. Thank you. Yep, thank you. So my second question, if I may, is so I'm of the understanding that QGTTM, MUTCD, etc., are of the jurisdiction of state agencies. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
state government.
State government, yeah, state agencies. Yep. So I'm of the belief, and this is just from my reading, that we as council possibly overreach if we're putting these into our subordinate law. The original motion was to simplify the process. And if applicants are already bound by the state legislation, by putting these in our subordinate local law, aren't we saying that council is taking on that risk? And by TRC taking on this risk, doesn't it further complicate the application process? And does it cost more for council to administer this? And and also at the cost of the applicant and council to duplicate state and federal legislation? That's what I'm really confused about, and really curious as to why we are duplicating state and federal legislation in our subordinate local laws.
Thank you for your question. I don't believe we're duplicating. I think we're very much pointing people to what is needs to be covered, and I'll ask Joe to speak to it. But we as the road infrastructure manager have statutory duties under those regulatory areas, and part of that is to advise the general public, because as I said, the spectrum of this is not just for those that deal with it every day. The spectrum of local laws for everybody, the whole of the public. So there's a lot of people that wouldn't know anything about the MUTC, or is there state legislation that even exists in respect to any of these sorts of things if they want to go out in the road reserve. So I think our document, our policy type document, being a local law, gives that insight for our community into how we operate and what we need focused on when it comes to wanting to do something in the road reserve. It doesn't go off and indicate, it doesn't copy into the document anything in respect to those legislative things other than pointing them out that they are what we follow. And I might just ask Joe to just add to that if you like. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you very much. This was a bit of a discussion through the consultation period as well. The suggestion I think that really stuck with me was that by referencing, and it's a reference to the MUTCD, that this is one of the key documents of practice around the implementation of temporary traffic management. And in Queensland, it's the MUTCD and the Queensland Guide to Temporary Traffic Management. The feedback that hit with me was that what if they change? Then what does that mean for our subordinate local law? Well, we did get some feedback on this as well, and even if they were to change name, which they haven't for decades, then they are still referenced by way of other pieces of legislation that call into meaning the documents that previously existed. So we're pretty safe there. There's no risk of needing to urgently change a subordinate local law because the state changed the title of or the document of the MUTCD. So we're pretty much covered there. I had also the opportunity to look at how other local governments might do the same in reference the quality expected and the discipline of temporary traffic management through the practice as it applies to work on roads and externals doing work on roads. And the few that I looked at, so I did grab a copy of Townsville, Sunny Coast, Gold Coast, Ipswich, Logan councils, and all of them in some way or another reference the MUTCD in their subordinate local law. So I think our practice is pretty consistent and standard, and I think we're at no risk of the name change causing a problem with our currency of subordinate local law at some stage in the future.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. So then, may I then, as a follow-up, just from an email that, Mike, you sent through today, or yesterday, I can't remember, can I just have some further, I just want to have a question about this paragraph. So the paragraph is, the February 2025 version of the AGTTM does reduce the accountability on council as road infrastructure manager regarding the need to approve the traffic management plan submitted to council, however, still requires the council, The Department of Transport, I realise that the Department of Transport and Main Roads have not indicated if or when they will harmonise with the new AGTTM, but as Joe, you just said, they don't change for decades. Well, this one may change and is probably looking likely that it will change. So if the February 2025 version of the AGTTM is adopted by DTMR, what effect will this have on our subordinate local law?
No, I'll pass on to Joe to go into the detail, but at the moment, as you pointed out, we need to go by the Queensland Guide, Temporary Traffic Management. That may or may not get it amended in due course, and we'll take that on board. That said, Joe, I'll make some comment in regards to what it means in respect to what we've got here. Okay.
So, sorry, Mike, can I just ask on what you've just said then? So, you know, Joe said that these haven't changed for decades, And if this one changes and is adopted by DTMR, won't that then have an effect on our subordinate local law?
No. What Joe was referring to, what hasn't changed for decades, is the MUTCD as a legislative document, okay, and also the Australian Guide or the Queensland Guide to Temporary Traffic Management. So those documents exist, okay. They'll always have ongoing amendments. Even the QG-TTM has probably had half a dozen amendments that I'm aware of in probably the last 6 or 7 years. So there was a very strong push from, as I've explained to Council previously, at a national level to improve road safety, okay, across all aspects of road safety and particularly temporary traffic management. So in the last decade, there was quite a shift in thinking nationally of how we would do that. So that saw a tightening up of the statutory roles that road infrastructure managers had to take on, and a clarity in respect to some of those elements. And we, being a road infrastructure manager, must take those on. We don't have a choice. That said, I'll just let Joe talk about that Australian Guide, Temporary Traffic Management, and what it may mean in respect to the local law, should some of those elements come through. Sometimes you find governments, the states, will take on some of the national changes, not all of them. All these sorts of things happen. Over to you, Joe.
Thank you. Yes, the bit that I was talking about was the title of MUTCD, for example, hasn't changed. So referring to it as the lead document, there's no risk of it going out of date by way of reference. And then even if it does change name from MUTCD to the Queensland document of something, like it will still have the meaning of as it did. So you won't need to change your subordinate local law with any urgency. That's that point. With respect to the recent change, this is a really interesting point, is that in 28th of February this year, Austroads updated their Part 8 of the Austroads Guide to Temporary Traffic Management. Austroads review and update documents all the time, and when they do, particularly in this case, with the desire to harmonise across the country, the states will consider those changes and work out how they're going to harmonise with it. At this stage, the Department of Transport and Main Roads are not, their harmonisation remains with the previous document. So that's why it's important for us to know what we're putting in our subordinate local law by way of referencing, because it can be something that changes and then changes practice significantly. When the Queensland Department of Transport and Main Roads recognise a change in practice, the head document is still their Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices and the Queensland Guide to Temporary Traffic Management, and the mechanisms that DTMR will put in place are around additional notification to entities to let them know of a change. They publish their amendments and the currency of those, and they let everyone know what is changed by way of Queensland's jurisdictional requirements. So there is training off it, which Council has a couple of very qualified traffic management designers.
Actually, Joe.
Sorry, you just pause there, Joe. Thank you. Mr. CEO would like to make a comment. Thanks.
Perhaps at risk of oversimplifying it, a name change to the state federal oversight bodies documents doesn't change anything. ACT's interpretation would say same document. In terms of any detail of technical standing that is introduced by the superior legislative state government documents, unlikely to be made soon. Our local law would be adopted and enforced and in practice and being used for some time, and would probably be due an update anyway. To the extent that there was an inconsistency before we updated our subordinate local law, the state's document will prevail because it is actually the superior regulatory document. If a simple yes or no, I suppose, answer, Joe, is that accordingly we are at low risk, therefore, of being inconsistent with a revised state document, and it would not be unduly detrimental to council's interests were that to change, I believe is the situation, Joe.
Correct.
Yeah. So I think that was more your question, which is, yes, it may become inconsistent. To the extent that it's inconsistent, the state or Australian document will prevail, but we don't foresee there's a difficulty arising from that.
Thank you, Councillor Melissa. Thanks, Joe. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Duena.
Thank you, Chair, Joe, Angela and Mike. Just a quick question. I noticed you said earlier that you've had additional engagement since our last information session. Can you talk me through that and what the main feedback was and who was there?
Yes. The date. Since the last time.
In March, I think. Yeah.
March, we did hold a presentation with entities that made submissions to present to them what the proposed subordinate local law might look like, and also the application form, and a little bit about the feedback received generally across the submitters. The main feedback about the form was that it's a step in the right direction and a lot simpler. It makes sense. There were questions around a couple of items on the form, but nothing terribly complex. There was feedback about the paragraphs, for example, in the subordinate local law. The two things that stood out to me were queries around the need to reference the MUTCD in the subordinate local law, which we've just discussed.
Yep.
The other was about was a little bit about trenching, which is the issue of opening up a road pavement to put a pipe through. So those two were the main items that continued to be raised there. Attended by, did I list? The UDIA were represented by Mr. Jacob McVeigh, who was a submitter in his own right as well. We had, that was the 24th of March this all happened. We had attendance by about 6 of the submitters, and I don't have a list of their names in front of me. I'm terribly sorry.
No, that's okay. Okay, and so the main feedback, have you made any more changes to the document since receiving that feedback?
Checked? No. We checked into the issue of the MUTCD just to double check how low the risk was of continuing to include it. The issue of trenching is one of council trying to preserve its asset best we can. So requiring at first instance an approach by tunnel boring, underboring, rather than open trenching and disturbing the road.
Okay, great. Another question, just in relation to the document, the agenda. Sorry, I'll just go back to it. Page 5. So we've reduced the large number of items required, duplication of other regulatory requirements. Then I just note set firm timeframes and expectations regarding the processing of applications and issuing of permits. I note that it's not recommended to include a statutory timeframe with the subordinate local law, but what are our sort of KPIs around timeframes and expectations? Are we sort of looking at that internally at the moment?
Yeah, it's 10 business days is what we try to turn around any application, a properly made application. As I've mentioned previously to council with the team here, majority of applications are properly made, which is good, but there is numerous ones that will come in without attached documents or needing further work before they actually can be made, be properly made application. So it's 10 days from when we receive it, and there can be questions. We try to still, even with any questions, we do offer a pre-lodgement opportunity for any, particularly for the, somebody's going to do something, a major development of some sort or similar, to help give some indications of the processes that might, or outcomes that might be appropriate for their type of development and what they are looking at doing. So we try to work with the applicant as closely as we can to get the best outcome, not only for them, but for our community.
Okay, because the feedback that I've been receiving personally is that sometimes like our processes are just really long and it takes a lot longer than those 10 business days. So do we achieve, 80%, 60% in that 10 business days for approval? 90%?
Council might know we attach an attachment each month now to the group report, which lists the current applications that have come in. And I think, look, I don't have the exact KPI, like is it 80%, but it's quite a significant number are done within the timeframes. I'll just ask Joe or Angelo to make comment there, please.
Through the chair, Councillor, we endeavour to try and get those out in those 10 days. The 10 days is per phase. If we have a full, complete and compliant application, certainly endeavour is at 10 days. If there's a need to go back to the applicant for further information, there's a further 10 days for further review of that application. So as you've seen monthly in the infrastructure service report, there's reporting on timings of each of those applications dealt with through the road operations area.
So that's, I guess, where the feedback we're getting is coming from, because it resets every time we ask another question. So we're not actually doing it in 10 days. It could be 30 or 40, depending on the number of questions.
Look, it's not too different to a DA application, okay? We've got and we do have a timeline that we try to work with, but we do also have requests for further information periods in that, which resets the clock in that process too. So depending, it depends on the quality and the level of information that's provided and that sort of thing. I think that you'll note with the group report, which does sort of outline those timings, where it sits with us and where it sits with them as well, as in the applicant. So we do try to, I can attest to that we are striving to always meet that 10 days. We also encourage industry, doesn't matter who, to not just, if they need something in a fortnight, not just come and dump it on our desk today and say, I need it by, Tuesday fortnight. We encourage them to try to give themselves a little bit of latitude and not sort of do it at the 11th hour within their development. We've worked very closely with a lot of developers where they do get caught in that space, and there's numerous occasions where their request has also been done in far less than 10 days. Okay, so we do try to work with industry as best we can to work through whatever we need to at any point.
Okay. And that's a really good addition to the group report, I believe, and worth having a look at. Thank you.
So, because word on the street is Townsville can turn it around in 10 days, and they do have that online process. So maybe if we have steps in our online process that you have to attach certain documents so you don't accidentally forget it, then maybe that will speed up the process.
Councillors, we need to fund it before we talk about doing
it.
We
were just
it will do that, and as you know, I mean, again, it'll be the quality, but you won't be able to submit until you've got everything done in it. So that would be a big step forward, I think.
Yeah.
Thank-
Okay.
Okay,
And just one really last question.
Quickly,
Community
yeah.
events. How have we consulted community groups on this and how this will affect them?
The community events, as I've said to council, the application process goes through under 1.14, so not directly this. The operations in the road reserve don't change whether it's a community event or a development happening, as far as us trying to manage the situations. And as council's requested, there's in the next couple of months, a proposed information session to come back on community events in particular and the process that it takes, through council.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Shine?
Thanks, Chair. Just to refer you to attachment 1, which is the draft subordinate local law, and go to schedule 1 and item number 4, and just Roman 4, which is the obstruction of pedestrian or vehicular traffic, unless the obstruction is justified on traffic engineering grounds. I note that that qualification has been inserted from the original, and I think thank you for arranging for that to be done. Could I just then go down to the next one, or two more down to item number 6, conditions that would ordinarily be imposed on an approval. And if you imposed all of them, it was really quite complex and demanding on applicants. Is it hopefully it is the practice, and I ask you, is it the practice that different standards apply or different conditions apply for example, a work associated with a country gravel road entrance to a private property, for example, as opposed to something being done, a building being erected in Ruffin Street, Toowoomba, in terms of the indemnities and the all of those requirements that are listed there. There's about 9 of them there, and then it goes on to specify further requirements as well. So do you have exercised the discretion, or are you able to exercise the discretion? Because it does say at the beginning of 6.1, the conditions of an approval may. So it's not a compulsory requirement under the bylaw, I wouldn't have thought. So in practice, I'd just like to, I think people would be interested, because that's some of the criticism that I've received, or most councillors would have received, I suppose, over the years, is seeing 2 or 3 or 4 stop-go people on a little country road where it might have a dozen cars or half a dozen cars a day or something like that. And it just sort of rankles people when we, concerned about the rates that they pay, that this is what it's being expended on and may well be able to be achieved more efficiently. You might be able to reassure me that is
Thank you,
in fact
Councillor
what has happened.
Yeah. First of all, in regards, as you say, conditions of approval may be applied. So most definitely, if the difference between something out in the boondocks, so to speak, in the region happening on a road compared to, say, in the middle of Market Street, whatever, it's relevant to the conditions that are applied are relevant to the development that's happening or the piece of work that's happening. In regards to how many traffic controllers and things that go on site to manage that, we don't necessarily tell them that they have to have 4 controllers or 1 controller or any controllers at the end of the day. As you can noted within the documents and materials that must accompany an application, that's through whoever their consultant is in that traffic guidance space. So they need to work with if they're consultants or advisors, their traffic guidance advisors, and work out, in the most cost-effective way to meet the outcomes here. But this is why we also offer them that pre-lodgement on something more significant, to actually give them at times some guidance. And also suggest to them if they change something a little bit, they might actually save themselves a bit of time and effort when it comes to actually what's going to happen on the ground. So we try to work with them to give them some advice from a lot of experience that sits within the team, and we've dealt with a lot of similar activities that have happened in the road network before, and we can give people some guidance on how that can be best achieved. So we don't just carte blanche hit them with every condition we can. We try to obviously, the minimum number of conditions that are relevant.
Thank you, Mr. Brady.
Follow up if I could. So in your personal experience, that variation does apply, quite regularly, and depending on those sort of extreme examples I gave. Yep.
Very much so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shine. Councillor McMahon.
Oh, thanks, Chair. Morning, team. Certainly most of my questions have been discussed, Chair, but around the confidential attachment 6 with the consultation submission, so I won't talk about it in detail, obviously, but I suppose the community sentiment around this has been, it's still not cutting through red tape, it's still lacking, it's still not where other LGAs are. And apparently there was a meeting on later in March, so noting most of the consultation from the communities before that, and a March meeting where the community, as you said before, it was coming to the party and appreciating the work done. So it's kind of like this March meeting perhaps contradicts or has a better way to put it, makes it less impacting having this consultation, that the vibe of the community is that there's too much red tape. So can you just talk to me through, is this the most up-to-date community sentiment on this proposal?
Happy to do that, Councillor. Councillor, the first step there was the resolution in December for us to formally go out to the community. So that was the step. That was 45 days. The next step from that is you receive the submissions. We received 9. We assess those submissions, and as noted on the issues and responses, on I think it's about the fourth page of the report, that gives you the consultation submission themes. We then had an information session towards the end of January, I think it was, February, sorry, with Council, and we spoke through those themes with you. And Council at that very point then said, asked of us, can we engage further, get more clarity around the submissions, not just accept them as written. So we did that as Council requested, and that was the meeting of the on around the 10th of March type meetings that we had. We then had a further Council information session with you where we went again, clarified some of the issues that had been raised, both through the submissions, the questionings and the answers that we'd got from meeting with those persons, those submitters. And we then talked to you at that next information session, which I think was on about the 15th of March or the 12th of March, to Council, at which stage we went through that. You then asked us to further engage with industry and give them an opportunity. When we presented to you in that information centre, we gave you the indication of what was coming, okay? And you said, well, has industry seen that yet? And we said, no, not at that point in time. So you said, can we show that to industry? So we did do that part for you, and that was the meeting of the 24th of March, where we invited those submitters to come. So we've taken every step and done every question the council asked of us. We've taken forward for you to engage and to give every opportunity for people out there, the community / mainly the submitters, to have very significant insight into the steps and processes that we're taking. So, and today's potentially the last step of where we go forward.
Yeah, no,
Thank you, Councillor McMahon.
thanks, Chair, for allowing the follow-up. And Mike, I'm grateful for that timeline. I was aware of most of it, but the last one. But I suppose it just gives me a little bit more faith that the consultation was done prior, the one that's in this report was done prior to those meetings, and that progress has been made since this consultation. Can I talk about as well the timeline, the 10 business days? Noting that graph that you put up that showed, I think this year, every single one has almost every single one's been done within the 10 days. And that's mirrors my research of most other LGAs have a 10 to 15 day, some 20 for getting these returned. It's in confidential, but it actually, there's some information in those confidential that says 10 days is rather wishful thinking and that there's actually a far more complex and drawn out procedure. So could I have comment on that, please? Because I know it's confidential and I can't say the specifics, Chair, but it certainly contradicts that 10-day rule. So can I just have a comment on that, please?
Yeah, look, we advertise 10 days and, again, I say a properly made application where things, I suppose, aren't properly made. You know, we get an application in today, we go back to the applicant and say, look, you've forgotten this, you've forgotten that. That could maybe, if they haven't got their traffic management plans, for instance, that could take them a couple of weeks to actually get those drawn up and into us. Okay. So the understanding of what's the requirements are, reasonable requirements from council are sometimes is a little bit limited out in industry and across the community. So it's that understanding at times. We work through that. On the other side, because it's like any communication, it's always, there's two sides to it, at least, that, you know, our staff are trying to work through that within the resources that we've got available as council, which are stretched at the best of times. So we do that, but they are, as you can see in those, you know, just even from this page, you can see quite a number well within 10 days, okay? But there is a number that have stretched out for varying reasons to be significantly longer as far as that's concerned. It's not that those, and I'll just take the top couple there that are on that sheet above in council. There's lots of reasoning to why something like that may take a considerable amount of time to work through, okay? And I assure you it's not from the staff not trying to get their application sorted. A lot of it depends on, you know, some requirements are quite complex. They're putting in sidetracks, they're putting major detours around sections of our community. They're impacting businesses and community in different ways. And it's making sure that those impacts are mitigated as best they can be through what is being put forward. So without going any further.
Yeah, no, Chair, thank you for that, Mike. I appreciate the answer. I suppose the answer I was looking for is, as you said, that when they're not complete, it takes us longer, and our officers are within timeframes working with and staffing requirements, working with applicants to get them completed. Can I have one more, Chair?
Quickly, thank you, Councillor McMahon.
I appreciate, Chair. No, I appreciate that, but I think this discussion is important, Chair, so thank you. Around your attachment 5, the draft application form. So it's fairly straightforward these days, and I applaud that. My issue goes with the supporting documentation and the fact that I need the traffic management plan, the public liability, the approved plans, and the trenching engineering report. Now, for me to get all that stuff, obviously, I've never done it, but I assume it's a fair amount of work to get all that stuff to support the rather straightforward plan. So as far as necessity, we have to have all of that stuff. And I think you've told me before when you're answering what percentage require the trenching engineering report. Thank you.
Open trenching requests are probably, 10%? Yeah, we'd have to go check. Look, we're not. Yeah, it's a low percentage, relatively low percentage of wanting to trench across the road. Look, trenching or underboring is an expensive exercise in itself. Okay, for a developer or for anybody. Okay, even ourselves. We try to manage that as best we can to mitigate. You know, there's not too many trenches that get recompacted that don't end up having a bump in them forevermore, unfortunately. So that's the issue around that. In regards to getting the documents together, the documents, the scale of those documents is relevant to the development that's happening or the work that's about to happen. You know, if it's a driveway crossover and they're doing something there, it might be a traffic management plan, might be just one page. If it's a major complex that's going to go in, and there's a couple in town here that are going to go in potentially shortly, where they impact the greater area, they can be significant. In of ourselves, when we, just as an example, when we worked with TMR, when we did the Boundary Street, Warrego Highway, Bridge Street intersection, we had over 50 temporary plans just for one intersection and joining our work to the Warrego Highway. So the complexity of these things can be, and TMR required all of that. So that's us putting in our application in for to TMR. You know, so the detail that we ask of an applicant is no more, no less really in what we ask of ourselves when we're doing works. So it's that what is required element and sort of to that level.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, for allowing
Thank you, Councillor McMahon. Councillor Manteuffel?
Through you, Chair, I'd like to put the motion that's on the books.
Thank you. With the addition there?
Yes, please.
Wendy will bring that up. Thank you. Moved by you, Councillor, seconded by Councillor Carl. So do we need to go into debate on that? No debate? I'll ask for a vote on that. Thank you. It's carried. Those in favour? Those against? The motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Angela, and thank you, Joe. I'm sorry. Thank you, Councillor Trevor. Item 4 is a review of works on road permit, fees and charges, and Joe Bannon. I'll ask Mike Brady to introduce it, and Joe Bannon is the author. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair. Councillors, this report follows on somewhat from our previous report, and obviously we've been talking about the application form in the previous report. And these are the council's fees and charges that we review at least annually in respect to various matters, but in this case, the review of works on road permit. In March this year, when we did fees and charges, councillors, we put a hold on leaving these as previous with the CPI upgrade. But council has been asking us to review this, as you know, now for quite a number of months, again, for the best part of the last 6 months. So we brought to council, we've got 4 options noted. The first option is to leave what we do today continue and what we've done for the last number of years. Similar to option 1, we brought in a second option back in to December, which was changing, putting a variable rate in for path closures and indicating to council how that could work. council deferred that and asked us to look further into that. We then took a number of sessions back to council in respect to discussing different options, and in doing that we also looked at across southeast Queensland in a lot of detail different councils on how they were applying their fees and charges to this type of work on road permits. We've tried to get a similar approach to the rest of southeast Queensland. I think that was one, when we look at the feedback that came from industry, there is this a want of, as best we can, a level of consistency across local governments, and we've taken that on board. We've brought forward to council in a couple of information sessions the opportunity on the 25th of February and the 12th of March, what that might look like. Back in the 25th of February, we looked at a number of items and different aspects of the options, and that was explained. We tried to take the feedback at that point into what we then brought to council on the 12th of March and give council some insight into where that was sort of culminating. Taken on that approach, councillors, there's option 3 and option 4, which is more in line with the approach of the rest of southeast Queensland. It does, and then we've recommended option 4. It does have the impacts, a couple of impacts there to note. First of all, the day rate that we've applied previously would disappear, in essence. So that would no longer be that. So that wouldn't the day rate in our fees and charges. So there'd be an application fee and then other costs, if depending on the type of development that's going forward or the request that's come in. That does have potentially an impact on revenue, councillors. As previously presented to council, the costs are in the order of about $600,000 a year to manage the road op space, but a lot of that is the needing to outsource for resource support to consultants and others, so that contract cost is fairly high in that $600,000. We also then, through our fees and charges, we've been able to bring in approximately the same amount on an annual basis to what it's cost us to actually do the assessment. Under this proposed option here, option 4 and option 3 is similar, that would revenue income is estimated to drop to around about $300,000. There may be a little bit of additional income, maybe up to another $50,000 or $100,000, pending the types of applications that actually come in or extensions that may be requested through a 12-month period. That said, so there is a potential drop in revenue there. That said, we believe there should be, with a number of factors, one, that we're all trying to simplify the process, so we're trying to go down that line. We've tried to simplify it through the local law that we've just passed. We're also trying to improve the processes, and by taking them to a more of an online approach, we're hoping to also bring in some efficiencies as well. On top of that, if we can get the internal capability built with being able to get the right staff to do some of this work, that would require less outsourcing. So actual operational cost to process these applications, etc., over time would drop. So we're suggesting that we would be aiming to work within the budget that would come from the revenue side. That said, I think at least in the first year, there is definitely a risk around that. And we'll have to see how we progress in the 12-month period. Look, councillors, I'm happy We're happy to take questions, and I think take it from there.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Joe. Mr. Mayor, your question?
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Mike, Joe and Angelo. And sort of following on from the last one to this one, thank you for the work that you've been doing. You know, this council has been of the mindset of doing things differently but better for this term. That's the mindset, and our community deserves us to do that. So I know that there's been an enormous amount of effort from November through to now to get to this point. That said, this is a committee meeting, and next week is the ordinary meeting of council when things come back to council. So there could well be some feedback during the week from different sectors in regard to the last report and this one. That said, I wanted to applaud the way that officers have listened to the feedback from councillors and the industry in regard, particularly this one, with the 3 levels. I think that's a fair and reasonable assessment of what that is. And in doing so, I just wanted to emphasise, Mike, the words that you said, that councillors, the operational team and industry all want the same thing. All want this to be simpler, easier to use and consistent. And that's what we're working towards. I can guarantee, and we all can, we're not going to get this right this time either. And there could well be some changes. It might even happen between now and next Tuesday that things rise to the fore that we don't know about. But one thing is for sure, that we can hold our hand on heart to the community and say, we are trying our best to work with industry and the community at large to make things better. And therefore, with this particular one, I'm happy to move, as it is, the officer's recommendation with option 4.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think there might be a few questions before we go.
Sorry, Councillor McMahon.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Chair, thanks. Thanks, Mike, your team. If I could just take you to attachment 2, the one that compares us with other councils. And the one that gets me is the third one along the construction site daily charge, and we do per road per day, and no other LGA seems to have any fee with that. So noting that we're going for option 4, which is attachment 6, can you explain to me what that particular column for construction site daily charge looks like in the attachment 6?
It doesn't exist as that, as it's indicated here. Okay, so this is the current. Attachment 2 is current.
Right.
So that's our current fee. So that's, inverted commas, option 1 would be to continue with that.
Yes.
So that's what we do charge today.
Yeah.
Okay, that's in essence
So,
what
so
it is.
this is when I was reading it, why I couldn't find it, because it's not there. So are you telling me it doesn't exist, or it's changed its name?
So to just talk to attachment 6, and as you can see, the numbers here are quite, and our whole approach is changing, okay, councillors. From where we currently do this charge, a daily charge, okay, a road being partially closed or fully closed, or it's footpath, whatever. So there's a range of costs, okay. So we're stepping away from that, suggesting and recommending the council to move away from that, but instead take this approach, which is now indicated here. And what is industry, and there was is understanding what that work support zone is. Okay, so there's the application fees are fairly straightforward, I think, in themselves, what they're saying. The extension one's fairly straightforward. The worksite, the regulated parking bay, is relevant to if there was a development about to happen straight out our front door here in Ruffin Street, and we can get up to $17 a day per bay per day if a car came in there every sort of hour or so, or every couple of hours, or whatever our time limits are out there. Okay, so that's what that $17 is based on. So it's what we lose from a commercial perspective. And then the work support zone, through the information sessions, we explain the work support zone, and there is a little diagram in the report that sort of shows you what a work support zone is. And again, councils such as Brisbane, Gold Coast and others do charge a fee for that closure, as you can see in that red space, if that could be a work support zone. So if a development is using that space exclusively for themselves to do their development, and that gets all signed and fenced and everything else, that becomes what we call a work support zone for their development, and they pay that square metre fee as noted in attachment 6.
Thank you. So in short, the construction site fee will change its name and be calculated differently in line with most other LGAs.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Tim, Councillor Farquhar.
Thank you, Chair. Very similar question to the last section that we had, and can you just talk me through the engagement that you've had with the industry in relation to these fees and charges and their feedback?
With fees and charges, we haven't been speaking to industry. The consultation's been obviously with council itself, and because these are council's fees and charges, okay, what we think is fair and reasonable, and then taking on, when we talk from consultation, talking to our peers at other local governments in South East Queensland, as noted in that report, that attachment 2 sort of indicates some of the local governments that we've worked with to understand how they go about structuring their fees and charges. So this isn't saying what's right. I think the feedback with the industry did come through Local Law 115, and if you actually look at those submissions, there is some feedback in respect to the costs and things like that, and one of the key costs that industry has been asking council to reconsider is that daily road charge. Okay, so that's probably been, when we talk about industry feed in or feedback, that's probably one that they've asked us to reconsider. And so we have taken that very much on board, and that's why we've presented quite a different option to council to how we're currently managing the fees and charges in respect to these applications.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Manteuffel.
Through your chair to Mike, would you be able to supply us, maybe before the ordinary meeting, just a cost breakdown, like the NAB bank site? That's one that's completed. It would have had XYZ costs on the old scheme. If we were going to adopt number 4, what would the costings be now if they built that building now? Just to get a practical idea of a site comparison, so to speak. Would you be able to come up with something like that?
I'm happy to take that question on notice. We have done a little bit of comparative stuff to councils, you might, just through the information sessions. So just as a bit of background, if councillors want to go back and have a look at those, that gives a little bit of background. But we'll try to find 2 or 3 recent developments.
That's one that just come to my mind. It'd be a good comparison.
We'll work on the ones that have been completed in the last year or 2, and just come back to you with those and try to give you some indication on that, what the difference may have been.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, we have a motion that's moved and seconded. Do we need to go into debate? Well, I'll call for a vote on that. Thank you. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item number 5 is the Toowoomba Regional Aerodrome Advisory Committee, appointment of community members, and we have a declaration of interest from Councillor Vonhoff, who is going to leave the meeting. Thank you, Councillor Rebecca. Must be good to get rid of those crutches. Thank you, councillors. I'll ask our GM Infrastructure Services, Mike Brady, to introduce, and Angelo, our Acting Manager of Transport and Drainage Planning. Perhaps you, Angelo, is it? Or Mike first? Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, councillors. I'll hand across to Angelo, but this is just filling the positions of an advisory committee of council. So it's relatively straightforward. We had 6 interested persons, so they're in confidential attachment. But I'll just hand it over to Angelo to add to that.
Thank you, Mike. Hello again,
Thanks,
councillors. If I may, through the chair, the report's noted as read. It's straightforward. As Mike was saying, we've received 6 nominations for 5 community member positions on the track, and happy to take questions through the chair.
Yes, thank you, and we appreciate the...
Sorry, I was just saying with you, Mike, Chair, but yeah, look, I think as the officers have pointed out, obviously I think we know the value and the importance of this particular advisory committee, and as I said, I do believe it's fairly straightforward, and if I didn't have a question, but if there are no further questions, I'm happy to move it. Well, I'm happy to move, yeah.
Sorry, question, Councillor O'Shea? Any questions? Okay, so we've got a mover and a second. If there's no need for debate, I'll call for a vote on that. Thank you. Those in favour? Thank you, councillors. I'm not here very often. That concludes the Infrastructure Committee meeting for April. I'd like to thank you all today. Thank you, Bailey, for your attendance. Thank you, Jason. And thank you, Angelo, Joe, Mike. Thank you to our acting CEO and to Wendy. And I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name. Nita. Thank you very much.
Councillors, just want to have a quick 5-minute catch-up, just ourselves with the interim CEO and Bailey before we break.